And if we ask the stars what they mean, what would they say back to us? Welcome! You want to go on a card journey today? Give me some of your time, and I'll give you some of your story. Well, let's see what the cards say. Hey there, card readers. Welcome to Koi Plays Tarot. My name is Koi, and I'm not going to be doing a tarot card reading for you today, but we are going to do a series on our channel called Learn With Me. Learn With Me is where we examine both the minor and major arcana, and in this session we have the threes and the Emperor and the Hierophant. Interesting, because now we're getting into the zodiac signs as well. So no preamble here, just take everything with a leap of faith and an entire understanding that we can always grow. I know we talked about the fool's journey in the first video, right? That we start off our journey, we encounter all these people. What does that mean to us? So before we get to that, we're going to look at the threes. Since we went aces, the first, the beginning, then the twos, what happens when point A and point B come together. Now the threes, because it becomes a party. So as per usual, water, earth, fire, and air all spread across, looking at what are the key elements or the things that we have to gain and understand by engaging with this, right? So let's start from left to right. Yeah, it looks different on video, but let's start here with the Three of Cups. So the three of your water, remember, water is the emotional abundance that we have within. How deep does our river really flow? The Three of Cups, I don't know if you can see it on camera. Oh, I really like this. It has a good reflection. The Three of Cups represents the notion of reunion, or hey, it's a vibe, right? The idea that we're meeting somebody, or more so we're reuniting with a person that we have either endearment towards or some type of relationship with, right? Now, could you be meeting somebody for the first time as well? Yes, depending on the context, because again, these cards singularly don't mean much without context, right? But that Three of Cups, it shows that there's an investment in just at least making that contact with said person, or meeting said person, could be out and about, whatever that means to you, right? Now, Three of Cups, depending on the context, because remember, we talked about aces and the twos before, it kind of gets a bad rap sometimes, especially in, well, if anybody's ever watched my one-to-one readings, I hesitate to call them love reads for a reason. This is one of the reasons, right? It doesn't always turn out lovely. Here, when Three of Cups comes up in those direct relational dynamics between point A and point B, well, here's one, here's two, who's the third, right? That's oftentimes an insinuation when this card is drawn. If not, then the intentionality of reunion. Because again, there's a bunch of people trying to celebrate with and for each other. Next, Three of Pentacles. I like this. Group projects that actually work out. Have you ever had that before? Very few times for me. But the Three of Pentacles represents, if nothing else, we have a workable dynamic between each other. This is the baseline element of friendship, which is why these things kind of divert from each other, right? The Three of Pentacles is not simply the fact that, okay, if we had the Three of Cups, the action of reuniting or being in each other's presence, feeling each other's vibe in a mutual space. The Three of Pentacles represents a plan of intentionality. These are the base elements of our friendship. It has to work. It's not just about good vibes. What makes us us? Now, if we're talking about collaborative project, then how do we work as a group dynamic, as a team? Whether that be person one, person two, or person one and the entire department, right? The notion of a group effort, all of our coins are starting to be put together. We're starting to see what can culminate when we put our efforts together, right? Three of Pentacles, the baseline, if not for compatibility of work, then for friendship. Because again, it's not just about saying that we're besties, it's about acting like it too. Three of Wands. And I don't know if you really see this. I have really long arms, but I can't stretch that far to the camera. The Three of Wands here, noticed by a scout on a boat looking at boats coming towards them on the horizon. Oftentimes in my videos, you'll hear me say, we're looking towards the horizon as soon as this card gets drawn. And that's because, again, let's do the numerical order, right? Aces, one. The Ace of Wands represents the fire of the human spirit, the emboldening of our passions. I'm gonna go get them kind of attitude, right? You take that wand plus another wand, it represents a goalpost or intentionality, right? We have something to aim for, not just feeling like we're fired up and ready to go. When we get to the Three of Wands, this represents, okay, one, two, what do we do with the third, right? Are we waving it around? What are we aiming towards? Are we trying to get some signal over here? What are we doing? That type of fire represents, okay, now I have expectations. It's not just enough to be energized. It's also not enough to just have this abstract of goals. Now we have expectations on top of that, right? We're building our wands, putting that together, okay, farther out into the distance, or depending on how much closer you're getting to that goal, into the near future, we're saying, no, this is coming to fruition, right? I can see it. I can anticipate it. It could be building up anxiety inside of me. It could be something I really hope for. It could be something I don't want to see at all. It doesn't matter. It just means that we have ascertained this is something that is on the horizon. This is something that we're looking at. We're aiming for it, right? That's how our fire builds up. Lastly, Three of Swords. Element of air. And it's almost always a good 9 times out of 10, regardless of the tarot deck that you use. It's almost always represented by a heart poked through in three different directions by 3 different swords, right? The notion of the sudden ripping pain of brokenheartedness, right? It has one of the worst reps in the entire deck, especially, again, in one-to-one relationship type of readings, because of that effort of saying, no, I'm in pain. I'm hurting right now. And it's not feeling any better. It's still sharp. It's still ripping me apart right now. It's not the best feeling. That's the easiest way I could put it. But that Three of Swords, when we can acknowledge it out loud, we can also understand why we're behaving in that way. We can understand how we got there. Because what's that Mr. Rogers quote? If it's mentionable, it's manageable, right? The moment we acknowledge that Three of Swords, that deep level of, oh, this cuts deep. I'm not feeling the best. I don't like it right now. I'm hurting. When we can say that to ourselves, we can start to piece apart why that is. Right, because swords at the end of the day, although they have such cutting words and just very no nonsense kind of attitude with them, they're meant to weed through the mist. Right, they're meant to get most directly to whatever point you're aiming for. That's why they require intentionality, because otherwise they just always hurt. So that Three of Swords, okay, if the heart is stabbed through in 3 different directions, then we also have to ask ourselves, why do we feel this way? And when we get to our why, we can understand the what of what's going on here. So those are the minor arcana, the 3s. You gotta love them when we get into groups. Now going to the major arcana, and I like this section in particular because now we're talking about not only major arcana in the Fool's Journey, we're also talking about how zodiac signs are tied with their power card representative in the deck. The first, again, in the Fool's Journey, if you remember, we start off with the Fool, the naivete of a person that wanted to go on their life-altering path. They met the Magician first, somebody who just manifested everything out of nowhere and tried to understand where they were going with it. Next, they met the High Priestess, a woman who, if nothing else, learned how to trust her own voice. Afterwards, looking now towards the Empress, when somehow he got into the Kingdom's Castle, right? And getting her guidance that it's all about love, right? If I don't have love, I have nothing. That doesn't mean I'm barred from taking any action. In fact, fulfillment comes in many different forms. You cannot stop doing. The Fool then meant the Emperor. The Emperor here, and this is the interesting part, is the power card representative of the sign Aries. I know this very well. I am an Aries. Hey, Aries gang. It's representative very much of somebody who has the ability to make choice, right? The Empress, after the Fool met her, got an audience with the Emperor, but ushered the Fool along their way. Because the Emperor and the Empress, as opposed to the matching face cards, there are 2 people who want each other but do not necessarily need each other, right? They have their own things, they have their own lives. It's just great when we have that level of autonomy, but also mutual understanding between each other. We're going to get into that dynamic later on when we encounter the face cards much further into the future. But as the Empress pushed the Fool towards the Emperor, okay, now beyond building, beyond everything that we do, you got to have somebody that makes a choice. And if that isn't the most Aries thing I've ever heard in my life, it just is what it is. You had to have somebody who is either brave or foolhardy enough to be willing to take that criticism and make that choice, right? This is why Aries is also coincidentally the start of the zodiac calendar, right? We begin with a ram on fire, Aries, because in order for things to change, we must establish that there's a conflict, right? Otherwise, everybody would just be making decisions. However, since no one makes decisions, nothing changes. These things go hand in hand. Aries are, this is why in their zodiac alignment, they're oftentimes known for being very confrontational because they make decisions that are seen as kind of gauche or just unlikable and unwantable. Like, no one wants to do that. You're being a little bit too much. Aries will tell you, okay, and what's that quote by Glorilla? At the end of the day, the day gonna end, right? Somebody has to make a decision here. And so the Emperor, the purpose of the Emperor's card, at the end of the day, you have to make a choice. The biggest advice that the Emperor gives the Fool along their journey, somehow you got into our royal court. Don't know how you did it, and at this point I don't care, because again, you are something special. That's why you're here. The Emperor tells the Fool, the biggest thing in life right now, you have to make a decision. Regardless of how it plays out afterwards, you have to be foolhardy enough to believe that your decision is worth making. Otherwise, you would never have any contemplation over it. That's the first. So after the Emperor has this, pep talk with the Fool, conversely, there's a lot of things the Emperor doesn't know. And we're going to get into that when we get to the reverses. So in order for getting guidance with decisions, the Emperor brings the Fool to the Hierophant. Card of Taurus. And interestingly, these are known as being two of the most stubborn cards in the deck. You will understand why in a second. The Hierophant does things by the book, right? If there's anything that Tauruses are known for, it's their power of persistence, whether right or whether wrong. There is a way of doing things. There's a way of getting things. There is a way of making it all work out. If there's a goal in mind, I can move the earth, the meadows, the fields. I can push anything that I need to make that happen. That is, again, well known amongst Taurus and their power abilities beyond, the luxury and the glamour. It's like, no, we work to get here. And I can find a way. I always find a way. The persistence of the Hierophant with the guidance of the Fool, now telling that Fool, hey, there are a way of doing things. Right? There is a way of guidance. The messages are out there. You need to listen to outside guidance as well. This is kind of juxtaposed against the High Priestess, because the Hierophant says, hey, for what you see and what you know that you know very little, if nothing at all. And that's why you're learning. This is why you're on your journey. Trust the books, all the lessons, everything in front of you. They're there for a reason. Let your path be guided so that it can be easier. There's a point to all of this. Even if you don't understand it, the universe does for you, right? So, very wordy, but still. Emperor and Hierophant have a level of mutual respect for each other because they kind of bounce off one another. One says, I made a choice. The other says, here's how that choice can be curtailed and guided in better directions. Now, with all that being said, let's push things in the reverse. Okay, so going back again, we now have the Three of Cups, our element of water, in the reverse. Dancing alone, the easiest way to put it, that I could feel like I'm out and about amongst a group of people, and I've never felt more isolated in my life. This not only represents, the act of intentional isolation, but the idea of emotional distancing, that no matter how close I am with this person, there's a cutoff going on, right? Why do I feel so cold? Why do I feel so distanced from it? So no matter how I could be at a party, I could be doing the things I used to, and yet simultaneously, I don't feel like I'm wanted or appreciated here. I just feel distance. Three of Pentacles in the reverse. Not necessarily always the inverse, but this one very much is. If you had a group project, it's not something that people drop the ball. It's just that this is your solo work, right? Now, if this was an effort amongst friends, then it also represents, hey, I got to do some me work. Let's put this on hold for now, this friendship idea here, because there's some things I got to get right for me. So on one hand, it represents the intentionality of bettering the self, focusing on what I have to do in order to make that group project work, or just focusing on what I need to do for me, regardless of how this group project turns out. And if it comes to a friendship, then it's like we got to accept where things are right now, even if it's not the most funnest thing in the world between you and I. Three of Wands in the reverse. Whereas if you saw the upright, again, representative of a person, a scout, looking at boats coming to them on the horizon, in the reverse, you ain't got no plan, right? There is, and I don't mean no plans and no intentionality, but rather we're just at this standstill where we have no anticipation, no expectation of anything, no movement, no intentionality. We're just kind of floating, right? We're there, but we're not there, if that makes any sense. We're seeing that all this stuff is going on around us, and we're just kind of coasting by. Not necessarily a bad inverse, but it just says, okay, if there's all this action happening around you, why are you still, right? You intended for this. You asked for this. Why are you not in motion? Three of Swords in the reverse. And this is more of a positivistic version because, again, the upright represents heartbreak. And in the reverse, heartbreak's still there, but I'm going to be okay. Right? The Three of Swords was such a glaring, sharp, shattering emotion of just breakdown of everything that I once felt. The Three of Swords in the reverse, yeah, the pain, I've experienced it, and life can still go on. I'm learning it little by little. I'm in a state of recovery. That doesn't mean I'm completely healed. Doesn't mean that everything's completely done and over with or all lessons have been learned. But it says, I'm okay with me right now. I'm getting better. I promise this to myself. To the major arcana, the Emperor in the reverse. The Emperor has a lot of power. Again, a decision maker, one who doesn't back down on their word because they have to go through it. Somebody got to do it. Somebody got to start that action. In the reverse, we went from a leader to a tyrant. This is when somebody is being loud and wrong. And if that ain't the representation of, the bad representation of Aries, then yeah, that is definitely what we get a lot. The Emperor in the reverse, okay, I'm making decisions and everybody around me is telling me, this isn't going to work. And not from a doubting standpoint, but because they're trying to assist you, right? This isn't going to work and you're still doing it anyways. Why are you doing this? Why are you like this? The Emperor says, I don't care, right? You trust my decision-making power before. Let's all be loud and wrong together. Let's take this one-way trip to the bad place, right? And depending on the amount of power held, and this is why the conflict almost always comes up for Aries, it could have detrimental effects on people around you, right? Again, you are the Emperor. People put you in the leadership positions more times than not because they know somebody's gonna get it done. And now sitting in the reality of, okay, well, what happens when you go off the deep end? What does that look like? It looks like a lot of conflict. The next, the Hierophant in the reverse. Okay, representative of two main core ideas. So if the Hierophant upright, again, card of Taurus, represents that everything not only quote unquote happens for a reason, but there is guidance and wisdom that you have to access. There's a way of doing that. In the reverse, the first is that the plan or whatever it was, every rule has an exception, right? If the Hierophant is so unwavering, you have to do it by the book. You got to do it by this plan. You have to. In the reverse, there's always a new way of looking at things. Does the Hierophant themselves look at it? And that's the struggle. That's where the stubbornness comes in, right? This is also kind of the reputation that Taurus has in the negative of, okay, you're trying to make this move, and it's not that we don't trust in you or believe in you, but this is burning around you. What are you doing with it, right? The notion of, okay, we get that there is a way of doing things, Can we try a little bit of alteration? Can you be a little bit accepting of change, or at least be able to budge a little bit so that we can work other ideas in? It's very hard to accept, right? It doesn't mean that they're not there. They very much are. It is acknowledged that they are. What's also acknowledged is, hey, they're not in a room or space to accept that yet. So let's turn everything back up. What have we seen today, card readers? We went through the threes, all the elements, water, earth, fire, and air, the Emperor, the card of Aries, and the Hierophant, the card of Taurus. Putting all these things together, we have these elements of, as we grow, as we encounter people and work in groups and dynamics in that process, more complex notions, more complex emotions and things like that, they get added on, right? As we build more cups, more pentacles, more wands, more swords, and meet more people in the Fool's journey, we're going to notice that, okay, we're starting to take these base level concepts and amplify them in many different directions. Again, there's a card for pretty much every emotion if you could find it. So that's what I have in the quote unquote read today. We learned about the Emperor, the Hierophant, Aries and Taurus, and all the threes. I hope you take this with your tarot card deck readers and try to incorporate some of the lessons there. Again, you know you're feeling what's going on internally the best. Every card has its story, has its meaning, it has its limitations as well. So as we learn together, learn with me, and let's go on these card journeys. I'll see you around, okay? Take care.